All right, everyone, we're going to get started. Today is March 17th, 2021. We're going to start the pre-meeting caucus. Call the meeting to order.
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola.
No, I'm sorry, that's for the, just call the roll for the caucus, I'm sorry. That's the roll for the main meeting. Sorry about that.
Is it a different role? Do we have different people?
Oh, I guess, yeah. I thought you were announcing the main meeting, because that's.
No.
You've never started, oh, go for it.
Thank you, Melissa.
Sorry.
I knew what you were doing.
For all those watching, I'm sorry, I'm dealing with all the technicals right now through my computer.
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Lemetico, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Thank you.
Mr. President, can you unmute the line? It's still muted.
It's not.
She just texted me. Said,
Anthony, do we have audio in the room?
the mic is.
Oh, because is she in the WebEx?
Yes. So it is muted. She's literally texting me right now.
For those of you who can hear, we're just trying to figure something out, and we'll get started in a moment.
That's not,
You should have USB selected for both of them.
yeah. And she should have audio for she should be hearing the room.
Correct.
It says that it is, if you even look at the screen, the mute is.
No, that's fine. That's supposed to be the way. It's like that at every meeting. But she should still have audio for the room. So she should have heard us from the room mics. It's a separate audio feed.
Yeah, Mike, say something. Yep, you got it. I heard you. You're good.
We good?
Are we sure?
I'm hearing on my phone.
Is that the YouTube or the WebEx?
That's the WebEx.
If you can hear us on your phone, then she must be having audio issues on her end.
Say something again.
Something again.
I didn't hear anything from the phone.
Who are we talking to?
I can hear you.
Oh, Kitty.
Okay.
A participant has joined the meeting.
So we'll get started with resolution number 1, sponsored by Councilmember Beatrice. It's honoring Steve Wynn and the Wynn Family Foundation. I'm assuming we want to make this one full council.
Yes, and what I want to do is, I want to bring this out, I want to get it approved, I'd like to have it framed and hold it until there's a time that Mr. Wynn can, or his family, we can be live with him to do that. If that's okay with everybody?
Sounds good?
So we're committing it? You're pulling it out later?
No. We're voting on it, we're getting it approved, but as far as like, I'm not going to mail nothing.
We'll just
out.
bring the family back in when they can and present it to them. Next is ordinance number 2. It's a fence permit by Councilmember Beatrice. Are you okay with this?
Yes, I am.
Next is Councilmember Moody, resolution number 3. It's a
I
resolution.
apologize, but we do have to stop for a second because there is something going on with the audio signal because the press also said they have no audio.
It does say that it's muted.
That's not the,
It's the WebEx. He's talking
yeah,
about.
that's not the
Okay.
mute. If, at the last meeting, when the computer was over here, it was the same, same situation.
Marcus, I didn't see.
So, just so everyone doesn't think we're nuts up here, IT didn't deliver the equipment to run the meeting tonight. So we're just trying to ad hoc get it working.
By October.
It happened. I don't want to like get into it. We're just rolling with it. You know what I'm saying? What's up, Anthony?
Go back to your, where's the WebEx thing?
You talk about this. See, now here's the problem.
Yeah.
If we have level going into the WebEx, they should be able to hear us on the other side.
Yeah, there is. The microphone has level.
Yeah? Let me switch it again. Hang on a second.
Go to camera.
audio. No, that's right, same as last week.
Change it from the digital audio interface and go to the top one where it says system audio with the USB. That's still getting the signal too.
Yeah, everything's getting signal.
I hear something.
So let's try this one and test it. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Something weird's going on. Anthony, I checked both settings and they're both proper.
Is your audio moving through the monitor?
I didn't go in there.
Yes.
Did that take over the audio system and it's not?
Should I make the "Did your wife bring him in" joke?
No,
Or
because
just
the
leave that
microphone is
alone?
digital audio interface and it's working. I just did a test.
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah.
I thought I had an intruder. I was the only one in the household that thought.
So here, look. I mean, it's simple. It's the WebEx interface. So, room mic check. Room mic check.
My gal has loose morals, sad.
Room mic check. Room mic check.
Change the speaker from Intel to the USB audio.
Speaker?
Yeah, go back.
I have bad judgment in the female morality.
Oh, see, that's right.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I can hear you.
Yes, no, that's okay. I just want everybody to know that. I misread them all the time. I think they're honorable. Not so much. I thought there was a correlation with church. Doesn't exist.
Well, that worked.
How are you?
Danielle, if you want to unmute yourself and you can hear us, let us know.
Click your microphone mic on your box. Underneath the video
Huh?
on the side.
Say again?
Was that good? What
Did you unclip the microphone's muted? Just unclip that, the red box. Now try it.
Hello, hello.
If they could, yes.
Is that you, Frank?
How could I not?
It must just not, you know what, Anthony, it must be because we're running it with a different laptop. Let's just go with it.
She called me right away.
All right, Danielle, WKTV, you should be able to hear me at this juncture. I hear us coming out of Frank's phone over there.
Facebook, like, yeah.
Well,
Because she's still,
you guys were right today,
And I love her.
so thank you.
she's on the path to it. She's not.
Listen, if circumstances were different, I'd go to her house.
All right, so we're good now.
But she's about
And Frank, if you could disconnect it, that'd be awesome.
I'll take it.
All right, go for it.
We starting over?
Yeah, just call it again.
All right, we are going to call this meeting of March 17th, 2021 to order. City of Utica Common Council.
A participant has left the meeting.
We'll start off with resolution number 1, Councilmember Beatrice honoring Steve Wynn and the Wynn Family Foundation. This is going to be full council, and this evening we're going to pass it, and then once his family can come in and receive this, we will present it to him.
Yes, that's good. Thank you.
Ordinance number 2, Councilmember Beatrice, there's a fence permit on Ontario Street. You're okay with this?
Yes, I am.
Next is resolution number 3, Councilmember Moody, resolution to adopt City of Utica Police Reform Plan. Are you okay with this?
Absolutely. Does it?
In full,
I was gonna ask, does anybody wanna join it?
yep, I'd like to do it full council.
Okay.
The only thing I request, if possible, colleagues, is to attach the actual reform to the legislation, so we have a record of the reform with the legislation. Would you please do that during the session? Thank you, sir.
We do have the,
This full council.
It'll be full
We have it right
council,
there.
and we'll also attach the actual plan to the.
Reform
res-
report, yeah.
Yep,
thank you.
One second, I have a question for you, Councilman. We received an email today. You got any changes that they weren't satisfied with? Am I right in saying that, or they want to make some I'm sure that, I think they want to make some changes. Yeah, I'm sure that they want to make some changes. So,
Are you satisfied with the?
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But I'm sure they'll probably speak during the, right, absolutely. Yep.
Next is resolution number 4, Councilmember Williamson, a resolution on behalf of the survivors of Warren Shorey requesting that the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr., award the Medal of Honor posthumously through Private Warren Shorey for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of his own life on February 19th, 1945, as set forth herein. You okay with this? We can do full council.
I'm okay with it. I'm okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Just a minor note on that one, gallantry spelled wrong. We'll just have it run through
Oh, yeah.
grammar and spell check before it's certified. Okay.
Thank you.
A.
Next, resolution number 5. It is Commissioner of Deeds for Jack Spaeth and Carmen Scalise. Is there anything in any of the other committees that we'd like to discuss?
This is majority lead, or Jack, want to go first?
Councilman Lemetico, you have the floor.
Right, we'll be bringing something out, about the full council, it's gonna be with the nursing home resolution.
Resolution number 6 in the committee of the whole.
And then I'm gonna be making some, amendments on it as well.
Okay.
But can we do that now?
As long as you get the support on, you can do it on the floor, Chair.
Let's just do it on the floor. Let's just change it a couple, it's going, it's actually moved on, so I gotta take a couple things out, but it's actually moved on within the legislation, so. It's not changing the wording at all, or the content of the meeting.
Okay.
Are you entertaining?
I would request that we go over that for the clerks, the amendments you're going, oh, you did already? Oh, okay, all right, great,
But
perfect.
I had one put together without changes.
Okay, perfect.
Jack, are you entertaining full council on this?
Anything anyone wants to discuss? Jack, more? Councilmember?
The speaker coming in,
Okay,
at 7 o'clock.
okay.
Madam Chairman? may
You
I
have the
say
floor,
something?
Council.
May I say something?
You have the floor.
I just wanted to mention to you regarding Councilman Williamson's request, which is full council. Obviously, I think the mayor will sign that, we'll have it certified. Then it will require letters to the President of the United States and the 3 legislative officials mentioned. I would like to suggest to you that when that letter is written, I think it should come from the mayor of the city, Utica, and his signature. And I think below that should be the president of the common council, his name and his signature, and every single councilman's name and signature on the forwarding letter. So both the full government of the city of Utica has approved this document and has attested thereto. And I think that the drafting of that letter will be done, I think, with a collaboration of Mr. Orrin, Corporation Council, the mayor, and I think when you sign it, you would, before it ever goes out, would have some suggestions to that. In other words, it will be a community effort between all those bodies. And we won't, it shouldn't go out until everybody's approved it, because they're gonna put their name on it in writing, a signature. Do you think that that's a good suggestion or not, and is that the way you'd like to proceed? I'm suggesting that. I'm not saying that's the way you have to do it. I just think that I've seen other things like this, and when the body is doing something to, like, the President of the United States, you have a little bit more formality. And I think it really should come from the chief executive, who ultimately will certify it as pursuant to the statute. And the president, of course, will be included too. That's my suggestion. Ms. Friend, I could see you moving. We'll ask the chairman if you'd like to speak.
Majority Leader, I would like to suggest, I like that suggestion from our council, and since that would be 11 of the elected officials in the city of Utica, why not make it 12 and include Mr. Morehouse as well?
Pardon me?
Let's include Mr. Morehouse as well, so that it's every elected official in the city of Utica government.
That's a good suggestion, yes.
Thank you.
The elected official, yes. Mr. Morehouse would be included if there's no objection from the body. That's not for me to say, that's for the body to say, but I would think that's a good suggestion. The more names that's representative of us, the more chance it has to get the attention of the president and Senator Schumer, Gildebrand, and the Congresswoman.
Thank you, Judge.
That's all.
Councilmember Miola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Majority Leader. Council members, we have some pieces that we do have to move forward out of committee with, of course, your approval. We have the amended information for the FOIL request that was done by our corporate counsel, our attorney, and our clerk. They brought it up to speed with our codes and to come in compliance with state law. We do have it in our committee. Is there any questions on moving that piece forward? Okay. Our next piece to move forward is, of course, the all-powerful annual estimate. It's legislation dated 3/3, and the amount that needs to be written in the bottom, our clerk and our deputy clerk gathered this amount from last year's annual estimate, $30,775,556. One more time, $30,075,556 is the amount of the annual estimate. It was the same as last year with a 0% tax increase. Our next legislation.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that? Majority Leader, can I ask a question about
You have
that?
the floor.
So is it too late for us to make any small adjustments to the budget at this point?
Yes, because it would have to be unanimous.
Okay.
So when does the amendment process happen, or generally happen?
We had the opportunity to amend it in the last meeting. I'm sorry I wasn't here. And you had the opportunity to amend in the meeting before, too.
Well, generally, if somebody has one, they bring it forward, and then we
submit
have a
it.
special meeting.
Right. They submit it and go from there. But I didn't hear anybody that had one.
I had one. I didn't realize that was the process.
Okay.
So,
And this happened to,
Well,
certainly
so
not the finance.
so let's back up just a
process
second.
of budget has been the question.
The budget has to be passed on the 20th. The public hearing is this evening. I'm not saying you have to do this. You'd, of course, need support of the council for the amendments. The budget has to be passed by the 20th. There's nothing stopping us from calling a special meeting on the 20th to do so, so it's legal. If you were or had legislation to entertain as amendments tonight, also you could present them now, although they would require unanimous approval by the full council for the amendments to pass. So,
That's correct in the process. So do you guys have any amendments?
Yeah, what I would like to, may I? May I?
You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to just, there are two things I would like to do. I've talked to Ms. Mowat about this a little bit, and I know that this probably is not possible at this point. I'm not comfortable with the fact that the two facilities people for this, for City Hall itself are each paid less than $15 an hour. They're paid, I believe, $14.62 an hour. I'd love to bring them up to $15 an hour. I realize the complications of that because they are part of a bargaining unit. So that's one small thing. It would cost us about $1,500 or so. The other thing is that I would like to build into the budget some money that Ms. Ferguson could use in order to move forward with her blue light project. She's done a great deal of research on this. She's also she's talking to is going to talk to MVHS about having them install some blue lights on their campus as they move forward, but I would like to see at least the beginning stages, and I'd like to give her a small budget that she could work with. She's been working hard on this with Stephanie Highland. I'd like to extend her a $20,000 budget in order so that she could have installed.
Or the youth council in general.
Hmm?
Or the youth council in
Or
general.
another way to go would be to give the youth council a general budget each year for them to, starting now, for them to have a little bit of money to work with in order to, we want them to learn how government works. This is one of the ways in which government works. You go out and do a little public works project.
All right.
So,
At this time, your thoughts
Can I
are,
have the
well,
floor for a second? So on that same topic, I'm a little confused because Miss Ferguson has contacted me, asked me for the support, asked me what she can do. I've got with Councilman DeBrango to set up a committee meeting next week because whatever she does, we have to have the city engineering department
Right.
around. It has to go through an RFP.
Right.
And I believe, Heather, you could probably tell us there, without putting money into the budget like that, there is ways that we can take from other departments to support this if this does happen. Am I correct in saying that? So that's why I didn't make a point to do any of that. This girl's worked very hard. I'm a little bit confused why you're speaking of it, which is fine, when she's contacted me and making me do all this extra work, and I was gonna speak on that later tonight. So if you're taking care of it, feel free to take the lead and take over with it. I have no problem with it. I'm just going by, the girl called me and asked me if I would help her, and I did everything I had to do.
well, I think
A lot of
that's
conflict we could go.
great. She's reached out to multiple council members. That's terrific. I didn't know that she had talked to you. What I was thinking about was simply from the budgetary end. You're talking about sort of working it through the process, the RFP, getting the engineering department involved. That's terrific.
Yes.
I was thinking of it from the budget end. How do we make sure that there's a little money put aside?
That's why I contacted Heather.
Okay.
That's why I contacted Frank. And
Okay.
I talked to Mark. I didn't realize,
Oh.
again, that she contacted you. I thought I was the only person
Majority
she
leader.
contacted.
I also didn't realize she contacted you. so-
Can I also add one more thing? To the point of the funding as well, and Commissioner Thomas might raise an eyebrow at this, but there's also another alternative as well, where there's CDBG funding as well.
Okay.
So there's multiple different ways this could be
Funded,
at least
correct.
proposed, at least proposed.
I don't know that it qualifies for CDBG.
But it's not, my
Right.
point is,
it has to be put
the
together.
funding, it can't be worked out right now, is my
Right,
point. Because
exactly.
we don't even know yet.
If Peter-
Judge Garamone, you have the floor.
If you have a budget amendment, it has to be in an individual ordinance. If there are multiple budget amendments, they each one have to have their own ordinance and all the numbers, and there has to be a reason for the change set forth in the ordinance. You can do that, but that is a brand-new ordinance, and usually when we do this, because this is the first time I haven't seen multiple changes, as you know, in the past, we usually have the comptroller sitting here to make sure that the figure we put in there after the budget amendments is the correct figure. Now, I think when I think the councilwoman said she wanted to put a wage differential in there, $16 an hour, was it, or something?
$15
And that would
an
apply
hour.
to all city employees. I don't understand that part. But Councilwoman, that all city employees that you were saying that was applying to?
The mayor does that, we don't have the authority.
Was that what you were saying? All city employees would get
No, that isn't what
$16 an hour?
No, I didn't say anything
Who
about
did
all
apply?
city
Who did it
employees.
apply to?
There's two of them.
The two facilities men who take
The
care
who?
of this
I-
building.
Pardon me?
The two facilities men who take care of this building.
Well,
That's also CSEA, correct,
Correct.
Heather?
Yes, which is
Yeah,
what I-
So that, we'd have to deal with CSEA.
Which is what I said that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a
Well,
legislative
I
issue.
said that.
It's a legislative issue.
I don't comment on what
Right.
individual body would be involved in that. But obviously, I'm just saying you have to have an individual ordinance with all the numbers, and usually the comptroller sitting here, and he tells us whatever you're doing will or will not affect the figure that Councilman Miola put to you is in the ordinance. That's all I'm saying. As far as what you do with those budget, that is a legislative thing. I'm just telling you how we do it in the legal way. Now,
Thank you, Judge.
Councilman Friend has those ordinances and introduces them, obviously, they would have to go into committee if you're even gonna consider them, because they can't be adopted
Talking about
tonight.
the EMS?
Well,
Thank you,
let's get
Judge.
unanimous approval.
Councilmember
Let's
Miola.
get unanimous approval.
Yeah, unanimous approval.
I think thank you, Councilman. I think the bigger thing that has happened for a second year in a row, and I don't think this is against the chairman or any other, is that this has been the second year where new council people have not fully understood the budget process, and I don't think that's a fault of our own, right? You have intelligent people around this table, and the aspect of ramming budget meetings down to some degree and not fully understanding the amendment process, I think is the overall question. And so I think that moving forward, for those of us who will be on the council the next time, training is important because these sorts of things happen late and it's a moving training. You don't fully recognize or understand when to put the amendments in, the process in that. So I think that's the bigger question, and since this is a caucus amongst the council, really, I think I would want to put that forward for next year to make sure that we understand fully, if you want to make an amendment, this is how you do it, or even the aspect of going through the budget, finding the money, how do you switch it from here, what are the normal, all of the things that you all know how to do. It would be good to share that information with us, so if we want to find money, we know how to find money.
So when I first came on, it was never given in a bullet point how to do something. If I had a question, I generally asked people who had been on the council for a while. And no one has had a problem answering any questions. So if you had any questions, just feel free to ask for anything.
Majority Leader, let me just say one thing. Everyone in this room did go through the budget process last year, and I believe many of the new people did propose amendments through the current process. So that aspect separate. If this is something where the council does not want to adopt this budget this evening, we just have to call a special meeting. If we are going to be moving forward with the budget, that is legislatively, as the judge said, up to the voting members of the council before me. So hash it out now, figure out what we'll do, and let's move forward.
So the amendments,
Can I ask one question to the budget director?
of course,
Yeah.
you have the floor.
So, when this budget passes, I never made this was a great budget, there was no tax increase, but I'm always under the impression, kind of the way I came to you and asked about the blue light thing, if there's transferring money. So for an example, if we wanted to come up with something to pull some money around to maybe find a rescue for these feral cats, I'm using that for an example. There's ways to take money from other lines to get that done, correct?
Yeah, we have a contingency fund. What happened is it would go to the Board of Estimate apportionment. 5 members, the mayor, the controller, Dave Short, Commissioner of DPW, your president of the Common Council, and then Jack Medico is presently assigned to Board of Ed. So there are 5 members that would review. I don't know, in my tenure here in the past 3 years, I've not seen the council ask for something to go through E&A. That doesn't mean that it wouldn't. I mean, I think with the addition of the stormwater money this year, the mayor listened to all last year. We didn't have a chance to add it in, and we did. So the mayor is always open to anything that he'd like to do. And I can't commit for him that he would be 100% for or against something, but he seems very amenable to anything that's reasonable.
Okay. And that was one reason I never made an amendment to add money, because I don't have a solution to it yet, because as the council said over here, the answer would be to try to find a place for these animals, and it's very difficult. So I can't go say, put $20,000 away when nobody has an answer to what was going on. So that's one reason I never brought that up. I always assumed that if we come up with something midway through, I could come, put something on the floor, and, we could do something.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Miola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ms. Majority Leader. As long as we're okay to move the annual estimate, I'd like to thank my colleagues for all their hard work and going through those budget lines. And of course, Heather Mullen. Without her, we wouldn't keep this budget as tight as it is. She is rough when it comes to getting rid of the money around here. She's pretty tight when it comes to money. Our next piece of legislation, council members, would hope that you would approve would be the paving. I'm hearing from our engineer, we do have to get these, you heard prior from our engineer, we do have to get these bids out as soon as possible. I'm under the conception that the council as a whole would like the $5 million as the referendum reflects. There is a piece of legislation for bonding in committee. It would have to be changed. Anywhere where it said 500,000 would have to be changed to 2.5 million. Of course, we'd have to take a loan out for 2.5 million. And anywhere where it says 3 million, of course, the maximum amount by the referendum would be 5 million. So that legislation was introduced January 20th of 21. It is in our committee, and it's ordinance number 6. Does any council members have any issues about moving our legislation for paving?
No, I think we should move it.
I just want to ask a question. I think
You
we
have
should
the
move
floor.
this. I think this is great. We're going to go for the full 5 million. I really appreciate that and approve of that. I do want to say that the first time we talked about this, I at the time suggested we amend it in exactly the way you just suggested, and I was told that no, it would need to be rewritten because bond ordinance language has to be very specific.
Well,
And yet tonight, all we're doing is exactly what I suggested, and then we could have told Mike Mahoney weeks ago that we were going forward with the 5 million.
Well, I was verified today by our attorney and corporate counsel that we can do it this way. I apologize that the information that you received was incorrect. All right. Let's move forward to the next piece that we have. Council members would be January of 20th would be the I guess the little answer or the little add-on to our paving. It's resolution number 5. It's for the purpose of New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. That also has to be attached. It's the SEQR Act. Anytime we do our roads, that piece of legislation has to accompany it. Is there any questions with that? Is dated
number
January 20th, 21,
It's on the screen.
Resolution number
and
5.
resolution number 5.
It's number 5. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any questions, council members? Okay. I'm all set, Majority Leader. Thank you very much.
Councilmember DeBrango, you have the floor.
Yes, just getting back to the blue line. With it, but I imagine to Councilman Beatrice, someone reached out to him, I believe it was Emma, and there was a gentleman in there that was trying to explain the process and how much it would be. So my idea was to go with maybe put this in Public Safety Committee, maybe get this gentleman online, get him on Skype. If you have any questions, you can answer, and maybe give us a pretty good figure on possibly the cost of it. If it's a really good one with a couple of them, I guess the request is 2 of them. And then at that time, if we decide to go with it, then we maybe can get the engineering and everybody else involved, and come up with a concrete figure, and maybe we can find some money within the budget to pay for it. If all council members will here, so that's what that was my feeling.
Councilman DeBrango, I also think that when we have that meeting next week, we invite, or in 2 weeks, our next meeting, I'm sorry, we bring somebody from the engineering department in also, so because, I mean, it's gonna be up to them to do that. So if you need me to contact the people for the meeting, I will do that, and you run the meeting. Just talk to me during.
I mean, there's a couple other items in that meeting that I want to discuss. I also want to bring out legislation, the towing legislation that we had
Right.
some complaints on over the past month or so. So I want to revisit that. I'll get together with the clerk, and I'll have the agenda for our public safety meeting. And we'll delve into touch on a few things as well that he sponsored. So hopefully we can cover a few of them, and we skip it in the process. With that said, I want to pull out dated 6/17/20, proposed resolution number 13 regarding the new act, the repeal of 58. So I think we have to adopt that as well. With the ones that are?
No.
It's in the public safety.
Yeah, that one we can discharge, Frank. That was to ask the mayor to do it, but he was kind enough to do it before we had to ask him, so.
Okay, that is all.
Okay, next,
Hello? Wait, I got one other thing.
Of course.
Sorry. I'd also like the Ordinance 5, the feral cat legislation. I'd like to pull that out and dispose of it, and then we'll have to come up with something new. This legislation's just been in there way too long, and we're gonna try to come up with something new.
Just on the floor, just make a motion to discharge the legislation from committee?
Okay, when it's
Okay.
my time to talk. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Since
And
we're all,
I'll be making the same thing with the neighborhood notification law.
I'll also be doing the same with resolution number 2, the resolution to create a quiet zone in the city of Utica. I had multiple constituents contact me regarding the train tracks, and as the trains go through, they blow their horn. And we were trying to come up with a way to make it quieter for the people who are living close by the train tracks. After much research and finding out how much money it would actually cost to even just get the area research to see if this is something that we could do. It's just not something that we can entertain at this time. So once that does happen again, we will bring it back out. But I will discharge that this evening. If that's all we have, we're going to move towards our speaker. President Galimi is going to connect them so that they can.
All right,
Enter the
Danielle,
meeting.
if you are ready, you could please unmute yourself. This evening, we have Danielle Smith from the Home Ownership Center. She'll be available and speaking with Brian Thomas from our own internal department regarding the rent and mortgage relief. So Danielle, if you could unmute yourself.
Can I also set this up too, President?
Say again?
Can I say a quick word before the?
Absolutely. Delvin Moody.
Yeah, this came up because a lot of questions had happened in the last meeting about rent relief, how much we've actually spent, the concern of landlords and people who own mortgages having difficulties with tenants and all of that. So we wanted to bring in the person in the organization that had a heavy hand in the rent relief and mortgage relief for the city of Utica, get some of the questions answered, as well as see if there was also, I guess, kind of tie that into the conversation about what we should be doing moving forward. A lot of this had brought up with the conversation about the 64 million and all of that there. So this is a good way to kind of see what we did with the large sums of money that came in the past and how that program was kind of fleshing out. So I'll turn it over to Danielle to kind of give us an overview of how much of those finances were spent, how much is left, what are the things that she's seen in the program, and what is kind of up the pipe in concern of what's coming from the federal government given the American Recovery Act.
So can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I know Brian's probably handing paper. I do report weekly to Brian on what is spent out, so he should have that there in front of him. Brian, I'm guessing that's what you're handing out.
I am. If I can just start, what I'm handing out is a summary of the funds that have been allocated so far for rent and mortgage relief. It's all through the CARES Act. The first round of funding, it's split between CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, and ESG, which is Emergency Solutions Grant. But there are different pots based on the income limits, and the income limits are in the bottom table on that sheet. So we have 2 rent relief programs, one for family incomes up to 50% of AMI, which is area median income, and then a second rent relief program which covers family incomes between 50 and 80%. We also have a mortgage relief program, which is for family who have incomes no more than 80% AMI, and then a second mortgage relief program for families whose incomes fall between the 80% and 120%. In terms of the funding that's been spent, you see the allocations that we started with. In terms of the latest numbers from UNHS, in the under 50% AMI rent relief, 81,000 and change has been expended so far for 40 families that were approved.
And that's 81 out of the 250.
81 out of the 330. In the 51 to 80% AMI, there's been 36,000. That's the 250 at the very top for 15 families. And then the mortgage relief program, in total, there's been 16 applications approved for 60,000. So in total, between the rent relief and mortgage relief, so far 178,000 has been expended of the 955. mortgage number, 16 applications in total, for a total of $60,000.
So if folks are, and I'm sure I'm not one of the questions, but if folks are denied, what's the general trend as to why they are denied? Is it income? Is it that they had a difficulty in showing that their loss of income was due to COVID? Generally, what's the reason for these denials?
Since Danielle handles
So
the,
Del,
go ahead, I'll let her
yeah, I
answer.
don't know, on Delvin, I can only partially hear what you're saying. Can you just, I think you're asking reasons for denial, correct?
Yes, yep, that's the reason.
Yep, okay, no worries. So I actually went and I had my staff pull every application in our system that has come in since we went live, both paper applications and applications through our online system. I can tell you that no one has been denied for being over income for the program. That has not been a reason. I can tell you that the majority of people do not end up submitting the required documentation to even make it through to approval. That is the #1 reason for denial. So when someone submits an application, if it's online, they submit it online at about the 1 day point, they get, a thank you for applying. Then at 3 days, we check in with them. Then 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, and we continue to check in if there's pieces of the application missing, not only to remind them of what's missing, but to see if they need one-on-one assistance, just to offer that they can make an appointment. Despite being COVID, we can make a one-on-one appointment. We only have a limited time to collect those documents before someone would have to reapply, because a lot of things are very time sensitive. So income is time sensitive. After 30 days, we would need to recheck their income. Their COVID hardship is time sensitive. So after 30 days, we do send a notice or call them, or both, depending on the circumstances, and just let them know, like, hey, here's what we're still missing. If we don't get these documents in, you will need to reapply if you're still interested in the program. So that's the #1 reason. The #2 most difficult document to receive is proof of the COVID hardship. I know I've talked to some people individually about this. This program is HUD funded. So HUD sets the requirements. Brian can speak to that, as the city gets those requirements directly from HUD. When we respond to the RFP, we also get told what those requirements are that our agency needs to follow. One of those things with the CV funding, the top thing in any CV webinar, is that you need to have documented proof of a COVID hardship. So when we have a file, that file needs to contain documents proving someone's COVID hardship. That can be showing a loss in income. That can be showing an increase in expense due to COVID. So if they had to stay home with their children, if they had to pay extra daycare for their child, if they had medical expenses related to COVID, if they lost hours at their job or lost their job, are some of the most common. There are other ones, but are the most common documented COVID hardships. We have had a very hard time with people being able to provide that.
If you're a landlord and you, essentially you experience loss because people are not paying you if they're a renter, would that landlord qualify for this mortgage program?
So not with this program. So not allow landlords to apply. I will tell you, we had plenty of landlords calling, very distraught. We would take the tenant's information and we would mail them an application, or we provide the landlord the application to give to their tenant. Many times, 9 out of 10, the tenant was not willing to fill out the application and apply. So we do need tenant documents. Could
they, if not gain money for the rental property, could they gain money for their own mortgage? Because that is a loss of income. So not necessarily money to pay for the property that I'm running, but money to pay for my own personal home mortgage. Because it is a loss of income.
Right, we didn't have any landlords, owner-occupied landlords with mortgages apply.
But if they did apply, like if I'm a landlord and I've lost money because my tenants are not paying, but I can use the money to pay my own mortgage, would that be an acceptable scenario?
Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, have to be an owner occupied property.
I didn't hear that, Danielle.
It would have to be an owner occupied property.
Correct.
So the landlord would have to reside in one of the units.
If you're
Right,
in a
that's
two-
what you
You
specified,
can't
correct,
pay your
Councilman?
mortgage on something that's only an income property.
Correct. You have to live in the unit.
If you live, right, so owner occupied.
If you live in a two-unit.
Yeah,
you
you
live in
live
one
in a double
unit.
decker.
No, I'm saying, right, no, but I'm saying under the mortgage program, if I'm a landlord, I have my own personal home mortgage, right? So could I say that my COVID hardship is the fact that these renters are not paying me money, therefore I need the assistance to pay for my own home mortgage?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We would be able to see that most likely in their bank records, so we look for patterns. So let's say, rent was being deposited at the rate of $2,000 a month, every month for the past, 90 days or a year or whatever prior to March 13th. And then they can show that once COVID hit, the rent deposits were not being made, the tenants were not paying. We would 100% work with someone to be able to pay their mortgage based on that COVID hardship. Yes, Delvin, yep.
I wonder if we can go back to those folks that we denied, those landlords maybe.
Only if they live in the,
They've got to live in the
they
city.
have to
here.
live in the dwelling. Yeah.
Danielle, this is Councilman Lomedico. I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, have we tried to put together any workshops for landlords or tenants to help them through this instead of just doing a one-on-one and just having like a workshop where we could get everybody together? Yeah, at the Parkway Center or something like that?
Yeah, so COVID rules have prevented us from being able to do that.
We had a fire on Blaine Diner Street.
Everything okay?
Yeah.
So we have not been able to do in-person group event. We've been able to do one-on-one meetings with individuals, but not a workshop per se of having 20, 30 people in the same room. We have not, for COVID restrictions, been able to do that yet.
Okay, second question on this is that, is this money that we haven't spent yet, is there a time limit where we have to spend it, or is this something that we can continue to working with the citizens here to see if we could help them out?
The city's grant agreement with HUD, I believe, has a 6-year timeline on the CDBG. I believe it's only a 2-year timeline on the ESG money.
Okay, so then we do have some more time to issue and
We do.
win this. Okay.
Could we change the scope over time? Like now it's COVID, could we change the scope as to any hardship over time or not? If it's 6
Those
years-
are HUD regulations, Delvin.
Is it because it was from the CARES Act?
Yeah, but I'm saying
It's got to
if
be
it,
tied, there's got to be a direct relationship with COVID.
That's another question I had. We have the $64 million coming down the pike here. I'm sure that there's going to be regulations and standards that we're going to have to meet exactly on how we're going to disseminate this money and issue this money out. Have we received any guidance from New York State exactly how we're going to do this and who's responsible for it, to issuing it?
So all we have is the actual law, and right now the law states that within 60 days, they're going to deposit almost half of what we've been allocated into our bank account, and then the balance of the money within 12 months. So we're awaiting Treasury regulations. Every time a law is passed, then various agencies step in and build regulations and promulgations into that. The law was rather vague, so I know there are groups and people that want to get out and talk about projects, and it's exciting. But at this moment, it's very difficult to talk about that because it is rather vague.
So we haven't really received any guidance on how we could spend this money and who we could spend it to?
No.
So it's pretty much people are talking about it, it's pretty much the wagon before the horse until we actually figure it out then?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Danielle, this is Councilman Beatrice. I got one question for you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, so is it possible that these tenants apply for this money and they get approved for the money and then they don't pay their rent?
The money is sent to the landlord directly.
Yeah, okay, so it is. So the landlord has to do nothing at all. So when they apply, it goes right to the landlord.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, the money is directly AHC, so it's, we have it set up with a financial institution that we work with to AHC those funds directly to the landlord's bank account.
So I would take it then in most cases, you're probably having problems, like a lot of these tenants know they don't have to pay their rent. They probably don't want to come down here and be bothered and fill all this paperwork out. Are you seeing that at all?
Yes, you know, in full disclosure, we've had, so I'll share this story. It's not giving away a name. We had an individual call, and they basically said that they had a DVR recording of the governor telling them that they didn't have to pay their rent. Could they submit that to us as their COVID hardship? So it is very difficult, I'm not gonna lie. We face a lot of challenges with trying to get these in, and honestly, we would love nothing more than to put these funds out. And if I can take a moment just to mention for anyone that hasn't heard about the county funding, because I know, Delvin, we've talked a lot about landlords. The county funding coming down from the Treasury, as long as there's no extra restrictions overlaid on it, which we all know how that can go, will include the city of Utica, and landlords are eligible to apply. They do not need the tenant to apply. So just something to put on your guys' radar, that another challenge we're gonna face with this funding is the county money coming down from the Treasury pays 12 months in arrears, which is amazing, and up to 3 months in additional in the future from their arrears. So it's going to be really hard to justify that individuals in the city would apply for this funding with the Treasury funding coming down. So just to be really transparent on that, the Treasury funds do not have the same regulations that HUD funds have.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, we've talked about this before. I think it came up at the last council meeting, this concern about people who aren't paying just because they don't want to because of the eviction moratorium. Do we have some real hard data on actually what percentage of people who are behind on their rent are just not paying because they think they don't have to, versus people who are behind on their rent because they're poor and the country is in an utter economic crisis as a result of an unforeseen virus? Do we have some real hard data on how many people are legitimately behind in their rent through no fault of their own versus all the stories that we hear about the slackers?
I haven't seen any data at either a national, state, or local level.
Great, thank you. Terrific. Danielle, did you want to answer that?
No, I was just going to say I can only speak for the number of individuals that can't document a COVID hardship. That does not mean that it's the fault of their own. It just means it can't be directly correlated to a COVID hardship.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? I mean, it's not my meeting.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Danielle, for coming on and
Thank you.
speaking. I think a big thank you from everyone.
No problem. And if I could just quickly say one more thing, which is we would like no more than to spend this money. Holding on to it and not being able to give it to members of the community does not at all do anything for our organization or for the city. But the HUD regulations and the income guidelines that HUD sets, we do have to follow. So I just want the council to understand that our hands are tied, and as an agency, we do pride ourselves on making sure that we always have all documentation in the file. If said documentation come audit time is not in the file, Brian unfortunately would have to answer for that, and ultimately it can lose the city tons of HUD funding when they do an audit. We have never had a finding, and we pride ourselves on not having a finding in the future. I am always open to answering any of your guys' questions as far as, you know, our program and the regulations, but the federal government and Brian do, you know, have to give us the regulations, and we just have to follow them. So I just want to make that clear so everyone understands.
Can I ask one more just really quick question?
Yes.
I would like to know what either the city or the Home Ownership Center has done in terms of promoting this, getting the word out, advertising. How do we make sure that tenants who are behind in their rent, who are often, you know, behind in a lot of ways, behind the cue ball, that'll actually know about this program?
Yeah, so I can tell you recent things we've done. We have partnered with both the United Way. We have partnered with, my brain just went blank, with a bunch of food drives locally.
Oh, okay.
And we did 1,400 flyers just last weekend. Johnson Park Center, thank you, sorry, my brain was blank. We have been providing them with flyers to put in their food boxes that are distributed. We have also reached out to all the nonprofits that we work with. I sit on the Access and Inclusion Committee, so I have shared the flyer there. I've shared the flyer with our Lead Coalition. We have shared the flyer with the Latino Society, anyone that we work with. We've also had multiple Zoom meetings with the center as well as others that work with people in these neighborhoods to get our flyer out to them, to have them translate it. So we have done all the outreach we can do in the COVID world. We would love to be, face to face, but right now that's, not possible.
Thank you, that sounds great.
Celeste, I'll say too, every time in a codes case that non-payment comes up, our officers are instructed to give them the information of the homeowner
Oh,
center and the renting, and we're doing that every contact.
Terrific.
But you find out it's not always effective because the lack of payment has made the relationship between the tenant and the landlord contentious, and they don't often want to do things to help each other at that point.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and Celeste, if I could also mention that we also work with Melanie from Legal Aid quite a bit. So if we see a case where we feel like, okay, we can't help this tenant, but it is obviously, no fault of their own, and this landlord is, we feel, violating state law, we do put them in touch with Melanie. We do that outreach. So we try and make sure that we're doing whatever we can, even if it's not within our program guidelines. And then one other thing when it comes to the mortgage assistant, that as we mentioned, we have quite a bit of time to spend. I have done outreach to the local judges personally to talk to them about when the eviction gets started after March 12th, if they would be willing to
Danielle, I think we're losing you. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's quite all
Is
right.
this any better?
Yes.
Okay, if we could potentially pay 6 months of the past due funding and then personally have our foreclosure counselor work with the bank or financial institution to do a modification agreement to catch them up. And the judges have agreed to do that and to meet with me as the cases start moving forward so that the referrals come to our agency and we can try and make sure that people get the assistance they need.
Thank you very much.
Danielle, Councilman Williams, I have a question.
Get on that mic, Mark. Thanks.
I'm on it, right?
All right.
Working? Oh. All right. So I got, the question I have is, if you got the landlords and you got tenants that are fraudulently saying they don't have to pay the rent, but they're working, they're buying new cars and everything else, but they're fraudulently not paying their rent. Is there a recourse to go after them criminally? Is that considered a felony? Over $500? I don't know.
How is it a fraud if the governor said that you don't have to pay?
Well, so actually, Danielle, this is the council president. I'd like to just answer that really quickly for Councilman Williamson. There's a stay in evictions. Taking that tenant to court would be the landlord's way of dealing with that. And right now, all 5 steps of the eviction process have been deemed non-functional by the governor's executive order. So no, right now the landlords cannot do anything about it.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
That is a civil matter. The other thing to make notice, there are crimes, there are laws that were passed in 2019 that landlords need to be aware of. In retaliation for your tenants not paying rent, they cannot shut off the utilities, they cannot change the locks. If they do so, those are misdemeanors.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get called there, we're gonna have to enforce that. So it can't be tit for tat. I'm angry by my tenants, so I'm gonna take these actions. So it is a crime for the landlord to retaliate as such.
Good to know.
Yes, and those are the cases that we're seeing, and we're referring to Melanie. When we get the phone call saying, I need you to pay my rent, my landlord's turning off my water, they're gonna, retaliate, we make sure to refer those to Melanie so that they can be handled.
But the
Okay.
problem, I'll just add, I mean, just so you guys understand, the problem with that is if the landlord doesn't admit to doing it intentionally, and then the landlord is unable to fix the problem, they'll say because they don't get rent. Now, somebody's living in a house without heat. There's no way to resolve that in a court right now because the courts are shut down and the courts are backed up. So even if some of these things have legal answers, it's frustrating when you work inside and work with these people every day because the same avenues of recourse that always existed aren't existing right now.
Marcus brought up a good point. The courts are starting to open up, but there's a huge backlog in the court docket right now. And it's taken a while to get through it.
Last question, Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I just had a quick question with regard to the comment that was made. Now, I've talked to Schumer's office and Gillibrand's office, not Tenney's office. They didn't return my call. But I talked to the senators, and my understanding was that the money coming from the American Recovery Act was in some way going to be less restrictive as opposed to more restrictive. So is that not the case?
We don't know until the Treasury regs come down. The language was very vague, yes, it was vague, but just like with any other legislation, you pass legislations and then your department heads have to implement, and occasionally we can make adjustments to that, right, as to how it's implemented. And so, I'll give you a great example. It says in one of the items, for any decrease in revenues that the city had from the pandemic, that we can make ourselves, we can pay ourselves for the year. Well, what does that mean exactly? Does that mean people didn't park in our parking garages because they didn't have to come to work? So do I go through and I take a historical average and I say, okay, we really should have gotten 300 and we got 100 and just pull 200 in? They may step in and say you can only use it for certain things, and that's not one of them. So, you know, and one of the items was, they have 4 different things you can use the money on, was for water, sewer, or broadband. Didn't say paving, didn't say buildings, didn't say any other infrastructure, and so we just don't know. And they may expand that, or they may reduce it. We just don't know.
The only things they specifically prohibited, right, were
Yes.
pension funds and reduced
Yeah,
taxes.
so you cannot use it towards your pension expense, and you cannot use it to reduce property taxes or taxes overall.
Thank you.
And I had a question on that then. So do you have a contact point with the feds? Exactly, you know, if you do have a question, you could contact, hey, we'd like to use this money for this. Is it feasible? I mean, do you have a point of contact?
Well, what may happen is that it may go through a series of agencies. So we may see that anything to do with infrastructure, maybe they add paving, and that's going to go through transportation. There is some opportunity for premium pay for essential workers. That may go through the Department of Labor. So it may come down that a variety of different agencies are handling a variety of different money. So we just don't know. We've never seen anything like this. So when it comes to Brian has a contact. He deals with federal funds from HUD. Okay, he doesn't really deal with federal funds from anywhere else but from HUD. If I have one agency, then it would be one person. But my gut instinct is it might be just up. Yeah.
So, we're running, I'm getting all kinds of text messages from the people that are concerned with the meeting, wondering if it's either still going on and so on and so forth for the next one. Just wanted to say something about this funding. There's a lot of people in the community right now talking about the fact that there's no restrictions on it. It's not the case. Every Monday, or when we do have the meetings, sometimes there's no business. We are discussing this every Monday morning at E&A right now with the budget director, trying to garner those qualifications of how the funding could be used. They're just not here yet. So that's the reality of it.
With that being said, we're going to close out the meeting.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to need 5 minutes to dial people in. We'll call the meeting to order. It's run this far. Let's call the meeting to order at 7:30. Okay? All right. for St. Patrick's Day, 3/17/2021. I'm going to call this meeting of the Common Council to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
McNeil, Burmaster, Friend, Miola, Moody, Beatrice, Williamson, Lomedico, DeBrango, Galimi, all present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence for the deceased members of the council. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Anyone who's joining online, everyone in the room, it's nice to have all the council people together so that we can perform the business of the Common Council. The first order of business will be the minutes. I will display them on the screen. Would the floor like to review, or would the floor like to make a motion to dispense with the reading?
I'll make a motion.
to dispense.
I'm going to take a motion to dispense from Councilman Williamson.
McNeil.
We have a second from McNeil. Any opposed to dispensing of the minutes? Okay, the minutes have been dispensed. First order of business this evening is public hearing. We do have a public hearing this evening. The public hearing is for two things. One, in reference to the executive order regarding police reform, which we do have a resolution on the agenda this evening to adopt that. And also, we have the public hearing for the annual estimate for 2021-2022. We have two people signed up to speak for the public hearing. Mr. Potter, your public comment, so we will get to the public comment section. The first person signed up to speak is Utica Roach Campbell. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you are speaking on behalf of the police reform or the annual estimate?
The police reform.
Okay, you have the floor, and you have about 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with your honorable board today. I am attorney Utica Roach Campbell. I am a member of the Black Leadership Coalition of Utica, New York, which is a group of 8 not-for-profit Black or Brown organizations here in Utica. Please hear our voices. On February 25th, 2021, the BLC held a public forum to allow the public to voice their concerns and recommendations to police reform. 159 concerned Uticans signed up to attend the meeting, and of those, over 100 attended the Zoom conference. I see today we have about 10 to 12 people in attendance. Number 1, Green Light District. Persons of our Black and Brown community are concerned about this proposition. To be clear, we do not oppose the value of more video surveillance as a way to fight crime. However, our opposition is in the fact that it does not come out of the governor's executive order 203, and therefore is ill-placed for voting here and now as part of police reform. It is the white elephant in the room because the governor's executive order was to have more surveillance of police activities, not of the public at large. Timelines, notwithstanding any of the proposals contained in the report. In order for this to be a working document, we recommend that timelines, milestones, and those dates and measurements of what a successfully implemented reform should look like needs to be added. These should be added before the Common Council votes on whether or not the reform is viable. Last but not least, the proposal for a civilian public safety board that was put forward and sponsored by Councilman Delvin Moody, Police Chief Williams, and Mayor Palmieri. I should add that Uticans have been requesting a civilian review board for more than 10 years now. Therefore, it is a good idea if we actually are given a real civilian review board. But sticking the word civilian at the beginning is obviously not enough. It has the same effect as labeling a chicken as a duck. For one, the current proposal says that 4 of the 7 persons appointed to the board will be governmental appointees. It also says that mayoral and council appointees get to sit for 3 consecutive possible terms, which means a possibility of 6 years, while everyone else only gets 4 possible years. Finally, the fact that no subpoena powers are being given. The BLC is willing to stand behind this proposition with significant changes. As is, it is not a civilian public safety board, but instead just another non-independent governmental body. Number 4, the BLC suggests if we really are to have a true civilian public safety or civilian police review board or whatever you want to call it here in Utica, we should start by number 1, limiting the mayoral appointees to only 1. Number 2, limiting the Utica Common Council appointees to only 1. Number 3, having 2 members from the NAACP as they are the premier black and brown advocacy group in the nation. Number 4, having 2 appointees specifically from nominations from black and brown not-for-profit organizations here in Utica, New York. And then the last member being the Public Safety Commissioner only, at which time that he does not hold another office, such as mayor or police chief or anything else in the city. If that is the case, then this position should revert back to someone from the not-for-profit as discussed above. Once the board is established, we think that it should be, the board should be allowed to vote and have that majority vote based on who the new not-for-profit members should be, again, to lessen governmental involvement with who is appointed. Last but not least, we did send in a report and recommendation, and we asked the councilmen and women, remember that you serve the people of Utica and that you were placed there by the people of Utica. Please hear our voices. We understand that the mayor did bring a group of black and brown people together and formed, I was a part of that board, and that is admirable. However, the BLC had over 160 people involved listening and participating in this public forum. So it's obvious that people are very much involved and very much interested in this outcome. Please do right by your constituents and hear their voices. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was Onika Roach Campbell speaking, referencing regarding police reform. Emma Ferguson, if you'd like to come up, you are next to speak.
I was gonna
If
bring her up on
Emma Ferguson.
Emma
Emma Ferguson, if you could please, yes, thank you. If you could please come up to the table. Take a seat right in front of this microphone right here, and you can address the council.
Can I have a point of information? Well, really a point of order.
A point of order, yes.
So since this is a public hearing, how is that different from public comment and
So
just-
I can,
No, I'm basically asking, does the council respond in the public hearing, or
No.
does the council respond?
No.
in-
people do not, in both public hearing and public comment, there is no privilege of the floor to go back and forth. It's for the people to speak their mind regarding the legislation and or city business, and then move on. All right, thank you. All right, yeah, exactly, during remonstrances. All right, so Emma Ferguson, thank you this evening. Are you speaking on behalf of the budget? Did you want to speak?
Sort of.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, very good. All right, so you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I apologize for any redundancy. I didn't realize anyone would be discussing this before 7, so I apologize. However, I just wanted to share some updated information on the blue lights. They're passed out, so as seen in front of you is my presentation from February 3rd. Blue lights are crime deterrent mechanisms. These lights act as a symbolic effort in providing safety for our community. Originally placed in college campuses around the country, I would like to expand this to our city. When I was here last time, the main question you all had was the price. Over the last month and a half, the Youth Council called colleges both locally and across the country to learn about these lights are best installed, how much they cost, and what the process of maintaining them looks like. Colleges outside of Utica area that were contacted were in cities such as New York City, Boston, DC, and Philadelphia to learn about these lights performing in a metropolitan area. Utica College suggested using Midstate Communications, but they were unable to provide a concrete price without getting the assistance from city employees. Pam Wells was able to contact Wrath Security on our behalf to get the closest estimate of approximately $5,000 per light. This is included on the last page of the packet. At the very least, I want 2 lights installed this year. I'd love to work with you all to decide where they should go and to meet with city employees to get detailed information necessary for an accurate quote. However, it is extremely important that the money is secured to start this process. If it is not, the question anyone asks will just be mere guesses and not direct answers. Thank you for the support and the opportunity to learn more about this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to the council members, if you're not speaking, make sure your mic is off, because then it also creates feedback. No, there was, we could hear people moving stuff around. It's a combination of things. Thank you. All right, thank you very much. There are no more people signed up to speak during the public hearing. So for those who did take the time to speak on either the budget and or the police reform, thank you for your time this evening. The public hearing is now closed. Okay. Next order of business is public comment. And we do have someone signed up. Howard Potter, if you could please unmute yourself. You've been provided the public comment period rule, and you will have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm not sure if everyone had read my email that I had sent about our property over on the back of Water Street. It was an extra parcel we bought within a year or 2 after purchasing our main property with our building, so we had room for expanding. But long story short, through the grapevine about a month ago, we received a private message from someone in City Hall letting us know that that parcel was showing that it was about to be foreclosed on. And my wife and I had no notice of this happening. So once we found out, we called City Hall. We went to, or not went to, but we called and got a hold of the assessor's office. The assessor's office said they tried to reach out to us multiple times by letter. And I sent in an email to everyone showing how the letter was addressed for being able to take someone's property, where it basically doesn't address our company name at all that owns the property. It doesn't even have the right address. 211 Water Street doesn't even exist. And then it was returned to the city. At no point did the city even attempt to give us a phone call and say, hey, there's an issue with your property and your taxes. And we could have lost our property over $2,000. Well, actually, it was under $2,000, $494 of the money that was due to the city for taxes was late fees and penalties for not paying it. So I'm kind of confused as how it could get this far and why someone from City Hall can't pick up the phone and talk to a local business owner that does a lot for the city and donates to the city. It's kind of embarrassing to have to find it out from someone, and the city cannot reach out to us as business owners and actually say, hey, there's an issue. Because you only receive one piece of paper in, I believe it's January, that has 3 stubs. And the biggest thing is, we weren't even getting the bills. We weren't even getting the bills if they weren't addressed to the right address. And I've asked countless times for the city to find out how this could possibly happen, and no one can explain it. But yet they charge us a $494 fee. So if it's happening to us, who else is it happening to? And no one can seem to explain that. And it doesn't seem like it's a big deal to anyone. And I find it kind of disgusting, because it's like, we work hard every day. We just got through a pandemic, and we're walking into something we didn't even know was happening. And I sent you guys in the emails, the city has all the correct information to send our tax bills to the right location. When you go online, there's issues with online as well that I pointed out in the email. I'm just looking for someone, I doubt you guys are gonna refund the money. The city isn't known for doing that. But what concerns me is people can just take your property and they're not even doing their due diligence to inform you correctly, nor find out why it's even happening to you. So basically, it's up to you, the taxpayer, to catch what the city's doing, and if you don't, guess what happens? You lose your property. And it's pretty sad that as much as we've done back there for our city, that it's taken 4 weeks, and we barely still have good answers, and no full answer as to why we even got that far to be notified. That's all I have to say about that. But I'm not sure if anyone's gonna vote on that, or if there's anything you guys can even do, but something needs to be done.
All right, Mr. Potter, during the context of public comment, again, there's no privilege of the floor to go back and forth with the people speaking. However, if you do stay on the meeting or flip to the live stream during remonstrances, I do believe certain council members have been working on that, and we'll have an update for you. Thanks. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we do have one more. We do have one more speaker this evening. She did join.
Howard Potter
has left the meeting.
Sorry. She did join due to technical difficulties. She ended up jumping on right at the tail end of the public hearing. But Cimbria Badenhusen was signed up to. Sorry, Kimbria was signed up to speak on police reform, so I'm going to have her speak during public comment. She joined. She was able to connect finally during the public comment. So, Cimbria, if you could please unmute yourself. You do have the floor to speak on behalf of the police reform.
Thank you, Mike, and it's because
Kimbria,
of your
sorry.
help that I was able to join. Thank you, Mike. It was because of your help I was able to join this evening. Thank you once again. First of all, thank you everyone for allowing me to speak. I hope everyone's well. This is a really important topic, and Utica did such an amazing job speaking for her community that I want to be supportive of her. All of the points she made were so important. The timeline definitely needs to be included. The board, the limiting appointments and increasing the NAACP. I support everything that she mentioned tonight. And I just wanted to share something that I learned just within the last couple of years, and that's the origins of policing. So policing didn't exist until landowners in the South decided that they didn't like the fact that slaves were escaping and making their way to the North. And so they created bands of people to chase down the slaves and to bring them back to the landowners, the slave owners. And so that's a very dark history. And we need to keep that in mind. When we're talking about reparations, we're not talking about, giving them back their 40 acres and a mule that we stole from them. We're talking about how can we repair the system as it currently exists that is continuing to keep people oppressed. And we have the Black Leadership Coalition, which has spent so much time working on this and has people organized. If they're making suggestions, they're the people that we should be listening to. And so I'm here in support of them. And I really appreciate everyone listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that ends all of the speakers this evening. Thank you very much. Do we have any communications from the mayor?
There are no communications.
Thank you very much. I would like to note, though, that the mayor and his staff has done plenty of communication regarding the police reform, both in the form of public releases and coordination with the council this week, leading up to today. So thank you for that. Reports from the city officers. Chief Ingersoll. One, I'd like a report, and two, I heard there is a 2 alarm going on, so if you could provide a status on that as well.
Yeah, so at about 5:21 tonight, a fire was reported at 9:30 Glendiana Street. It's been placed under control shortly before I got to the meeting. I was at the fire. There was a lot of damage to the structure. Unfortunately, 4 adults and 5 children have been displaced from their home. They have lost everything in the house. There's really not a lot that's salvageable. So the Red Cross is assisting, and I'd like to keep them in our thoughts. And if anybody would like to help them out, we could probably get you in contact with them. There were no injuries.
Anything else this evening?
No, that's it.
All right, we're going to go in order. Budget Director, you have anything this evening?
Nothing.
Okay. Corporation Counsel, thank you for joining. Anything?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Chief Williams, Deputy Chief Noonan.
Yeah, I'd like to speak about police reform and our police reform collaborative. I want to say overall, I think looking at police reform plans throughout the state, ours is probably one of the best. I'm very proud of it. I want to thank the Police Reform Committee as a whole, and specifically the leadership of our co-chairs, Marcus Phillips and Reverend Dr. Webster, as well as our councilman, Devin Moody. They did a fantastic job during these meetings. We had multiple meetings on police reform, and it kept us on point, focused, and moving, the discussions moving along. You know, I know Ms. Roach Campbell spoke about these topics that she presented today. These have been discussed at length, and the committee as a whole, with the exception of her, did not agree with her position. That being said, I want to make this clear. When it comes to police reform efforts, we've been doing reforms before they started calling reforms. You got to be progressive as a police department. You have to keep on moving your department along. If you don't do so, it's a recipe for disaster. So I'll give you examples. We were the first in the United County at body-worn cameras. We are accredited the police department to ensure that we have up-to-date policies. But it's been a number of different initiatives being put forward on behalf of our community and our police department. But having said that, I've heard from other communities that they say police reform is a one-time deal, and you know it's going to go away. It's going to sit on a shelf. That will not be the case with us. Actually, the most important thing I got out of our police reform efforts is the fact that we're educating our community about what we do as a police department. Not everybody just agrees or signs up to want to be part of our citizen police academy. We wish that more would do, and we've learned a lot about our police department. But overall, as a committee, they did a fantastic job, and they kept us moving along. We were participants. We weren't steering the committee, but we were educating what we do. And going forward, the most important thing is that we continue to have dialogue. And with the public safety board that we have in place, there are going to be town hall meetings, and there are going to be discussions with members about police tactics, policies, and citizen complaints. So we have a great blueprint in front of us. Yes, we have to develop time frames, but that will come as soon as this is adopted.
Thank you very much. Codes Department.
Yeah, so I'm also the co-chair of police reform. I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think, you know, including Ms. Roach Campbell, and especially including the police, because that's something we didn't see in the rest of the state. The amount of people that came to the table was humbling. As somebody that's worked in government for a while now, the time they put in, you know, they didn't get paid, and they opened themselves up for this kind of public scrutiny where, you know, people are going to agree, disagree in one of the most contentious issues of our time. And, you know, I get paid by taxpayers, so I'm paid to take it, and I will. I get it. It's part of the job. But there's a lot of private citizens that sat on the committee and took on the issue, including Ms. Roach Campbell, that are dealing or are going to have to deal with a level of scrutiny that they've never seen before. And I just want to tip my hat to them. And I do want to thank the police for coming to the table and being part of a reform and not resisting reform like we've seen in so many places across the state. So, that being said, I also just want to speak as the codes commissioner and just remind everybody that the snow is melting. So we're in what we call spring cleaning mode. You started at the beginning of the season to have everybody pick up, and so our city doesn't look like a mess when all this goes away. So we're out there, that's why we're out there, and there could be some significant fines. So just pick up your properties. If there's public listening, help us keep the city looking nice.
Thank you very much. Update on green waste. I know that's technically Dave Short, but that's mid-April, correct? I think it's April 15th? April 15th? April 12th? Okay, so.
Oh, then that changed.
All right, so just order from the floor. Order from the floor. This was a comment from the public. I got multiple emails. I wanted to tack it onto the codes because it's something that people get tagged from, okay, from the codes department. Green waste does not go out until April 12th. Obviously, we're going to be ready if we get some warm days to clean things up. But if you don't want the codes department knocking, please hold off till the 12th. Until then, containerize things if you do need to do it in the meantime. Okay, thank you. Controller, Morehouse, I believe you're on the call. Can you hear us? Hello? Maybe? I thought I heard him join again. Okay, I was going to get an update from the controller, but I think we're all good. Do we have any cash reports today, clerk?
No cash reports today.
Okay, thank you very much. Petitions, remonstrances, appeals, and legislation from the floor. First District and Majority Leader Maria McNeil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to start off with resolution number 2, at the resolution creating a quiet zone in the city of Utica, New York. I'd like to move to discharge this piece.
Is there a second? Second. The second is Williamson. For these, I'm just going to call for any opposed, since we're all in the room. It's good to be in the room. Any opposed to discharging that legislation? Okay.
Next, I'd like to move resolution number 5, Commissioner of Deeds for Jack Spaeth and Carmen Scalise.
Hang on, I got to find the packet here. Thank you. Right. Okay, second was Moody. Your votes on this Commissioner of Deeds, please. Nice to use that board again.
9 E's adopted.
Next,
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to move resolution number 5, the resolution determining that proposed action as a type 2 action for purposes of the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, whereas the city of Utica, Oneida County, New York, the city, is considering undertaking the resurfacing of various city streets and roads, including sidewalks, curbs, gutters, drainage, landscaping, and grading or improving the right-of-way with flexible pavement of a type described in local finance law section 2A20C, and incidental improvements and expenses in connection therewith. And whereas pursuant to Article 8 of the Environmental Conservative Law and amended the Seeker Act and the regulations adopted pursuant thereto, Department of Environmental Conservation in the State of New York, being 6 NYCRR Part 617 as amended, the city desired to comply with the Seeker Act and the regulations with respect to the project, and now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Utica, Oneida County, New York, as follows. 1, the project constitutes, sorry, my contacts are, a type 2 action under 6 NYCRR 617.5C1, and no further action under the Seeker Act and regulations as required. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Is there a motion to move from committee?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second? DeBrango's the second on that. Any opposed to bringing that from committee? Okay, your votes.
Nine E's adopted.
Thank you. Anything else this evening?
I'd like to move ordinance number 7, ordinance to amend section 2-2-128 of the Utica City Code for fees pertaining to Freedom of Information Law requests. Be it ordained that section 2-2-128 of the Utica City Code is hereby amended to read as follows. Section 2-2-128 fees. A, the fee for copying records shall be 25 cents per page for photocopies not exceeding 9 inches by 14 inches. B, the fee for copies of records not covered by subsection of the section shall not exceed the actual reproduction cost, which is the average unit cost for copying a record. C, In determining the actual cost for reproducing a record, the fee may include only, 1, the amount equal to the hourly salary attributed to the lowest paid agency employee who has the necessary skills required to prepare a copy of requested records, subject to the provisions of subsection 4 of this paragraph. 2, the actual cost of the storage device or media provided to the person making the request in complying with such request. 3, the actual cost of engaging an outside professional service to prepare a copy of the record when, due to the lack of technology and/or capability, no city employee is able to do so. 4, preparing a copy shall not include search time and administrative costs, and no fees shall be charged unless 2 hours of employee time is needed to prepare a copy of the record requested. D, a person requesting a record shall be informed of the estimated cost of preparing a copy of the record if more than 2 hours of the agency employee's time is needed, or if an outside professional service would be retained to prepare a copy of the record.
All right, is that a motion to move from committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Second from Miola. Any opposed to removing that from committee? Okay, your votes on that legislation.
9 E's adopted.
Anything else this evening?
That'll be all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Second District, Councilman Burmaster, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Third District, Councilperson Friend, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple of things I'd like to mention first before I see whether there's any, there's some legislation I think I'm going to discharge tonight. I got my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine on Monday. I'm really excited about it. I got it up at SUNY Poly. Everybody had talked about what an efficient operation they run, and it's really true. It actually took me less time to get vaccinated than it took me to sit still in order to make sure I wasn't going to fall over from getting vaccinated. So I was actually in and out in like 12 minutes, and then I had to sit down for 15. It's a really impressive operation. And I was especially appreciative of the National Guardsmen who were there, who came from far away and have left their families, the two young men, National Guardsmen, who helped me were actually from Brooklyn. And they were there, and they actually gave me my shot, or one of them gave me my shot, and one did the paperwork end of things. So I'm just deeply, deeply appreciative of those Guardsmen who have left their family and come up here to upstate New York to do this really good work on our behalf. I very much encourage everyone to get vaccinated as soon as you can. I was eligible as a college teacher, and a big shout out to my union, the United University Professions, which represents me and which advocated on behalf of all college teachers that they be included with the K-12 teachers. So that's why I was eligible, which was really great. So big shout out to both of those groups. Violence against Asians and Asian Americans is very much on the uprise, on the uptick in this country. We've seen that over the last several weeks and several months, lots of incidences of unprovoked violence against Asian Americans. And of course that culminated, let's hope that it's the culmination, in yesterday's murder of 6 Asian American women in the Atlanta area. So really disturbing level of racist and misogynist violence against these Asian women. So I know that we all condemn this kind of violence, and I know that we all work hard to end it in our communities. I hope that we all become a little extra vigilant right now about the kind of violence that is directed, and hatred that is directed at Asians and Asian Americans. So I would just really like to call on all members of our city and community to pay special attention to the members of our community. We have large Asian immigrant communities here in Utica who do a great deal to contribute to the wonderfulness of Utica. So I would like to hope that we would all be sort of extra vigilant about that. That's all I have for remarks this evening. I do have some, when I can find it, I have some legislation that I would like to discharge. One would be the neighborhood notification law. So this is, I'm getting there. Ordinance number 5, oh, nope, that's Joe's. Ordinance number 1, an ordinance enacting a neighborhood notification and meeting clause to city codes. I would like to discharge from committee that piece of legislation, please.
There's a second from Moody. Any opposed to discharging that legislation? Okay, it's discharged. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have this evening, Mr. President.
All right, 4th District, Councilman and President Pro Temp, Miola, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to start off with discharging 2 old pieces of legislation from committee. Discharge resolution number 13, civil rights law, dated 6/17/20. It's in the Public Safety Committee.
I've got it up on the screen, yes. Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
All right, I'm going to go with DeBrango. I think he beat you to the punch of that. Yeah. Any opposed to discharging that? Okay, it's discharged.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to discharge also from committee ordinance number 2, amending section 2-21-20-12-8, FOIL request dated 12/16/2020.
Let's see, that was in...
That was in the legislation committee of the whole, sir.
Yeah. There it is. Okay, second. We have a second from Moody. Any opposed to discharging this legislation? Okay, discharged. The clerks are over here having fun erasing things from committee so that they don't have to continually email to people.
Saving some paper, Mr. President, saving some paper.
Which one was that?
That was in committee of the whole. It was ordinance number 2, dated 12/16/2020. It was the original piece of FOIL request legislation that was placed into committee in December. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. President. Council members, I'd like to move the annual estimate this year. I do have to read it in its entirety, so bear with me. Ordained in the annual estimate, 2021-22 fiscal year, submitted by the Board of E&A. The estimate revenues and expenditures for the city for the fiscal year, including the revenues which, in judgment of the Board of Estimate, will be receiving during the year, the amount of the sinking fund available by paying indebtedness, and of the unexpended balance, and also being an estimate of the expenditures which the Board of E&A deems necessary to provide the expense of the conducting business in the city of Utica for each board, borough, department, office thereof, and the various purposes contempt by law to pay the principal, interest, and bonded indebtedness falling due in the year 2021-22. Development Block Grant Program, and hereby is approved and adopted and approves the submission of 2021-22. I'm not sure if it's the 47th year, but I'm going to skip that one section. Entitled Community Development Block Grant Program, and presented and authorized by the mayor to take action necessary to implement the program. The items and sums enumerated in all columns except the column labeled approved by estimate and apportionment and the annual estimate are in nature of estimate and are not considered as appropriation. They are employed for guidance of office, boroughs, and department heads. With the exception of those particular items and sums more specifically identified in Addendum A attached thereto and made part hereof, the several items and sums stated by column labeled approved by E&A and annual estimate, the estimate expenditures are hereby appropriated in the amounts of several offices, boroughs, departments, and purposes thereto specified in 2021-22 fiscal year. Those particular items and sums particularly set forth in Addendum A are not appropriated in the sums specified in the annual estimate for 21-22 fiscal year as submitted by the Board of E&A, but are hereby appropriated in the amounts particularly set forth in Addendum A. This is all legal stuff. The several items enumerated in the annual estimate and several items and sums thereof modified and specified in Addendum A and estimated revenues and monies to be raised by taxation in addition thereto and contained in the annual estimate Addendum A to pay the expenses of conducting business of the city of Utica and purpose contemplated by law, hereby appropriated and shall become applicable in the amount of the annual estimate as modified in Addendum A for the purpose of the meeting said appropriation. The amount of $30,075,400 $565. Everybody agree? As set forth and specified in the annual estimate as modified, Addendum A is hereby determined to be the tax budget to be raised by general city tax for 2021 fiscal year.
We did reference it is the 47th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there any debate at this time? Does anyone want to state anything before I call the vote on this?
I'd just like to say a couple of things.
Okay, go for it.
I am going to vote for this. I think it's in general a good budget. I appreciate all the hard work that went into it. I think that the council should consider the idea that no one should work for this city and make less than $15 an hour. If you work full-time and make $15 an hour, you can't support yourself, and I don't think that anybody should work full-time and not be able to live. So I would just like to sort of plant the seed now that the council could consider down the road passing an ordinance that would set a minimum wage for our own employees here in the city of Utica at $15 an hour. So that's my comment upon the budget.
Okay. Anyone else?
We get moved from committees, Mr. President, first?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we're talking about that. So your motion was to move from committee. Lemetico is a second. Any opposed to moving the annual estimate from committee? Okay, it's out on the floor. Thank you. All right, anyone else that would like to comment before, obviously, the voting? You can qualify your vote, of course. Okay, your votes.
Nine yeas adopted.
Thank you very much. Congratulations, we can pay the bills in a month. All right. Anything else this evening?
Mr. President, I do have one more piece of legislation I might like to move from committee. It's a legislation for the bonding ordinance for our street paving. It is quite cumbersome to read through the thing, but I like to make an amendment as soon as we have the motion to move it from committee, sir. We have to call for a vote and a motion to amend, if possible.
I'll second it.
Yes, just hang on one second. Let me pull the.
It's dated January 2021.
It's not there. Hang on, I had it up here a second ago. It should be in here. Right up here. There we are. Thank you. So there's a motion to pull bond ordinance authorizing the issuance of well, it's technically, the one that was in committee was issuing $500,000 in serial bonds of the city of Utica, Oneida County, New York, to finance the cost of street paving projects. Is there a second to pull that from committee? Lemetico is the second. Any opposed to pulling this from committee? Okay, it's on the floor for amendment, debate, and a vote.
Mr. President, I'd like to amend where we read $500,000 anywhere on the legislation to be amended to $2.5 million. That would be the amount of money that we would put in our capital plan for a loan. In addition to that, Mr. President, I'd like to amend anywhere where we see $3 million to $5 million, which is the maximum allocation for the referendum.
Okay, you'll see on the screen that the clerks have taken the time in between the meetings to reflect the proposed amendments.
I'll second that.
Legislation. We have a second from Lemetico. Any opposed to those amendments? Okay, your amendments pass. Thank you. And your votes on the legislation.
Nine yeas adopted.
Okay. Anything else this evening?
I'd just like to add one more thing. I'd like to thank the council, my colleagues, the department heads, the mayor, our budget director, all your hard work to keep the budget down to a zero for our taxpayers. They need it most in this COVID time that we went through, and I appreciate everybody working hard to keep our budget down. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. 5th District, Councilman Moody, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to first thank Danielle Smith and Commissioner Thomas, who came earlier to talk about the rent relief and the mortgage. It was very helpful to have that information. A lot of people, particularly in my district, don't necessarily know all the ins and outs, and so to be able to have a response to them about that program, rent relief and mortgage, was very helpful, and so I want to thank them again for coming earlier. I do want to take a quick second to kind of respond to some of the things mentioned from the BLC and Attorney Roach Campbell with regard to police reform. I first want to commend the mayor, the co-chairs, the police chief, in their ability to work with us to make sure that we have this process of reforming our police department, and then at times looking at how we can have a better public safety sector in general. So with regard to the aspect that that we need to listen to the community as opposed to the board, it was kind of roped in that we need to listen to the BLC or the community as opposed to the board that was assembled. I don't want the council to think that we have not listened to the community. Number one, the mayor comprised the board that is from the community, and my question really is rhetorically, who on the board doesn't represent the community? You have folks from Cornhill, you have folks, Walt Savage, Gary Harvey, Patrick Johnson, they don't represent the community. So this notion that this board worked in a silo or that this committee was not in some way representing the people whom they say they represent is a false narrative and one that needs to be worked against, because this committee is the community of Utica, and we did not waste ourselves with having a national conversation, and the council needs to know this. We did not have a national conversation about abolishing the police. We did not have a national conversation to respond to all of the trends that were on Twitter or Facebook. We had a conversation about the Utica Police Department and the reforms that this agency needs to make. And we were not wasting time with responding to what was trendy on social media, but had already been done and dealt with in our city. And the other thing about reform, which a lot of people don't know, that the reform is not necessarily done through the policies. We have good policies across the board. It's done with accountability. Anytime you have an officer who has done something wrong, I can guarantee you they acted against the policies that are in the agency. These questions were about accountability, transparency, and how we can build our community together. So I wanted to make that very clear. I also want to ward against this idea that policing came through the Fugitive Slave Act, which is what Chimbia was alluding. You can even look at the Bible and see where the aspect of law enforcement goes back to the beginning of law in general in humanity. So the idea that policing came from the Fugitive Slave Act or the South up through the North is not something that I want out in the public. But I do want to respond to two things, and then I'll call the question, because I don't want to have a history lesson tonight. You all don't want to hear that. The idea about the green light districts, and the idea about the green light districts being an over-surveillance of black and brown communities. Well, let me say where this came from. This came from, in part, from Detroit. At the time, Detroit was ran by a black mayor, ran by a predominantly black city council, and over 75% of the elected officials in Detroit at the time that this was passed were black and brown. They had to ask the tough questions. If we are having crime in our community, and it's one thing to have the rhetoric when you can go home at night and don't have to live with it in Utica, but when you have the questions of crime, you have to make tough decisions in order to make sure you fight back on crime, which are not necessarily popular, but you give me a better solution in terms of how to deal with Oneida Square and the illegal activity that we're having with those corner stores. If we don't put cameras down there, in order to be able to provide greater accountability, cameras don't only look at crime, they look at the officers as well. And so this notion that more cameras in the community will be an over-policing of black and brown people, as if the camera just shut off when the police are present, is a false dichotomy and something that we have to ward against. The green light districts, it was birthed out of the black community in Detroit, who went to elected officials that were black as well and said, what can we do to fight against the crime and the nuisance that we're having in our community, so it is not an over-policing of the black and brown community. The other thing I want to talk about is the composition of this Citizens Public Safety Board. Number one, the reason why the board was crafted in the way that it was is because we felt as though if we create a citizens review board with subpoena power that came in the same light of what we've heard tonight or in other times before, with a big stick mentality that was adversarial to the police department, the union would tell the police officers, you show up, but you don't have to say anything, right? The city would be in a difficult position because you have to represent the officers and the city at the same time. And why would you come in as enemies if you don't even know that that's the dynamic that you have to come in on? And so we created a board that was not 95% looking at complaints from the community, but was saying, this is our starting point. We'll streamline the complaint process when it comes down to police and public safety in general, but we'll also collect an auditor who will have subpoena power if needed to look at the data, look at the information, and get the information in terms of saying, what can we do to improve, to reform, not just now, but in the future? And so we developed a board to look at the police, to say, how can we be better and take complaints from the community? So it is not, to Anika's point, no, it is not a board with subpoena power per se, but it is a board that looks very open and honestly about the issues in this city and make sure that the community has a point person by which if there is an issue, if a good cop has a bad day, there is a complaint process by which they can voice those concerns to the police department. And so this reform that we put together, this plan, I think is one of the best in the state, not because I'm a part of the committee or represent the city or Cornhill, but it is because of the approach that we took. We had tough conversations, difficult conversations, but we worked together in order to make it done. And so I would admonish all of you on this council to vote in favor of this plan. Now, given what the youth council said, I would like to make one small amendment to this plan. I talked to the chair and the chief. In honor of the work of Emma Ferguson and what she's done and what the youth council has done, I would, first motion would be to change green light districts to blue light districts and kind of have a synergy between the blue light system that the youth council is proposing and the hopefully blue light districts that the police reform is proposing as well. So, Mr. President, that'll be my first motion with regard.
First, we need to move this from committee, please.
Not on the floor yet.
Yes.
Well, but if I move that, I'm still making a motion to.
Oh, I'm sorry, this isn't a committee. This was presented at pre-meeting conference. Very sorry. So you're discussing the legislation, but you'd like to make an amendment to the actual
plan.
Reform plan itself.
To the plan. A part of the plan.
I have it on the screen.
Right.
The resolution adopts the plan as it's on the screen, so he'd like to actually make a live amendment to this actual plan. What, do you know what page it's on?
Can you do that? Can you do it on the legislation anywhere where it says?
Just
green light,
substitute.
pink, blue light?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Substitute every expression that says green light, change it to blue light.
Okay, the council does it. All right. We don't. So you're making a motion to amend the police reform plan to strike and replace green light with blue light.
Right.
I second that.
Okay, we have a second, Councilman Lomatico. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay. I'd like to ask the clerks to relay that change to the people who compiled the report so that it can be reflected in the report file. Thank you.
I do have a question on that.
Yes.
I know I've worked hard on it. Now, are we required to provide these phones? Because this is a blue light district, are we required to fund for that?
No, I think the motion, as Councilman Moody stated, was just so that there was synergy between what the youth council was attempting to provide and this plan. So it's a valid concern, but this wouldn't pose any requirement at all whatsoever.
so I'll understand, when we amend the report, we'll understand that as just a name change, not the substance of what the district is.
It also does change.
We don't commit right away until we find out the actual cost, the logistics of it, going through the engineering department.
Right.
Before we commit to anything.
Absolutely.
I'd like to also say something about this amendment, which I think would alleviate some of your concerns. Changing this from green light to blue light does change it from something very divisive that people can create divisive discussion over, and changes it to something that's widely known as a safety and safe harboring utility that campuses, municipalities, hospitals, et cetera, do use already. So I think, you know, it's in name only, but does change it to something that reflects, I think, what's attempting to be established by the reform report. Would you agree with that? Okay. Anyone else? Anyone opposed to this amendment? Okay, the strike and replace has been passed.
I'm just gonna read
Yes.
I'd like to bring forth resolution number 3. Resolution to adopt City of Utica Police Reform Plan. Whereas the City of Utica, in compliance with the governor's official order issued on June 12, 2020, conducted a review of current police practices and policies for the Utica Police Department, and whereas each municipality in the state of New York was tasked to conduct this review and submit a formal report of reforms by April 1st, 2021, or all state funding would be withheld from the city. And whereas the mayor of Utica, as chief executive of the city, organized a diverse group named the City of Utica Police Reform Committee that was tasked with the responsibility of review and recommending necessary changes that merited and agreed to. And whereas said committee worked on recommendations in the following areas: use of force, crime prevention, community engagement, justice administration, and officer complaints. And whereas the City of Utica Police Reform Committee held meetings to learn about current police procedures, make recommendations, and to hear public comment. And whereas upon completing such process, the committee publicly announced initial drafts on February 17, 2021, and held various town hall and public comment sessions. And whereas on March 12, 2021, the final report of the City of Utica Police Reform Committee was submitted to the Utica Common Council for formal adoption and submission to the State of New York, at which time the Common Council held a public hearing on March 17, 2021. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Utica Common Council accepts and adopts the City of Utica Police Reform Plan and will work to create subsequent ordinances and laws and merited to advance the plan. And be it further resolved, the City of Utica Common Council, upon adoption of this resolution, will send such documentation to the mayor, the City of Utica Police Reform Committee, and the State of New York Department of Budget by the established deadline for full compliance.
Second.
Okay, friend is the second. Your votes.
I'd like to qualify my vote when we're done.
Qualify the vote. You have the floor.
I just want to say
Don't call it.
I have, you can't see it yet, but I have voted for this. I think this is a good resolution, and I think the reform policy, the whole kit and caboodle, is really excellent. I want to just sort of reinforce a couple of things, in part what the chief said. You know, this one thing isn't the one thing. It's a step on the road. One of the things that's been really a great relief to me as I came on the council is that we have such an excellent police department. There are other cities, I will not name them, but they're to the west of us, which have less good practices in place. And I'm really relieved that we, as a council and as a city, don't have to deal with those. Other cities are beset by worse police problems than we have, and I'm really grateful for that, and grateful for the hard work that the chief and the deputy chief and the entire department put into to such good practices. That said, I think that we should always consider moving forward, and the part of this resolution that is particularly important to me is the second to last paragraph. We'll work to create subsequent ordinances. I think it now falls upon us, now that the committee work is done and we're passing this policy, that the council ought to consider some ordinances that actually take this good work and codify it into law. There is nothing here that is actually enforceable. This is a non-binding resolution that supports the work of a very good committee that has worked hard. Now it's our turn, moving forward, that we take some of these suggestions here and we codify it directly into the laws of the City of Utica, and I would encourage us to do that. But I do want to thank everybody for all the hard work that they've done to bring this policy forward. That's it, I'm done.
All right, we have Councilman Miola, you have the floor.
Yeah, Mr. President, I just need to clarify one thing at the table. Heather, is there a deadline for this submission?
Yes, April 1st.
April 1st. So we have to get it to the mayor, and we have to get it to the state prior to April 1st. So I just want to inform our clerk and all the council members that that's our deadline. I appreciate everybody getting this done. There's a lot of hard work that went into this. Councilman Moody did a wonderful job presenting this, and I'd like to thank the police department also. We got it done. It's going to be in the state's hands by the deadline. Thank you very much, Council. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, call the vote, please.
9 E's adopted.
I'm done, Mr. President.
Thank you. 6th District, Councilman Beatrice, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, first thing, I want to wish everybody happy St. Patrick's Day today. So, that being said, I'd also like to thank the Utica Food Pantry. Hosted a food giveaway today. It was at the Irish Cultural Center. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. It was chaired by Pat Costello, Chief Brooks, and a special thanks to Richard Tomeno, who spent the day there giving out food. They gave out 35,000 pounds of food today. So I just thought that was a great thing, and I wanted to give them some accolades. Next thing I'd like to talk about is basically what our codes enforcer talked about. It's people's pride in your property. We do a great job, but this time of the year, you know, it's very sloppy, very messy. Just ask anybody that's listening, take a little effort, get a bag, pick up some papers, and we're going to work along. I got a couple things going on to, you know, help pick up and keep our city looking clean. I'd also want to have a special thanks to a couple of people on our youth council. Olivia Tobias, she's reached out to me. I'm going to be meeting with her on Friday, and that's one of the things we talked about. She wants to get a committee going. I want to make sure it's all set to get to the parks and pick up papers. This council, these kids are very ambitious. Emma Ferguson, the same thing. She's reached out to me. We are going to have that, you know, committee meeting next week, and hopefully, you know, we can get something done. But, you know, I'm pretty proud of the work that these kids done. They didn't just take this and say I'm on the youth council. They've came out and they've really come up with some ideas, and they're doing a great job with that. So I want some legislation I want to take care of. I want to discharge ordinance number 5 on the feral cats. We plan on doing something different than this, so I'd like to discharge this ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Williamson. Any opposed to discharging ordinance 5 dated 4/15/2020, feral cats?
Okay, and I'd like to bring out resolution number 1, honoring Steve Wynn.
Attorney Onika Roach Campbell has left the meeting.
I'd like to honor Steve Wynn and the Wynn Foundation, and what I'd like to do here is get this passed, get it, and try to get with, you know, administration or the clerk, or get with some.
Councilman
Yes.
Beatrice, will you be placing this in committee or
No.
attempting to pass this?
No, we're going to pass it tonight, but I just want to keep it. I want to keep it so it's, you know, I want to present this in person if possible.
Okay.
So we're going to try to find a way when Mr. Wynn or his family or members of his foundation are in the area.
Okay.
Okay? Okay.
So you are going to move this?
Yes, I'm going to move it right now.
Okay. Would you like to read it, or?
Yes, yes, I'm going to read it.
All right.
And I offer anybody, I'd love to make it full council, so feel free to participate in that.
Anyone
okay?
opposed to full council? Okay.
Honoring Steve Wynn and the Wynn Family Foundation. Whereas, if you have gone through hard times and there is more dark than light, do not despair. There always seems to be relief from someone or somewhere. Whereas, this nation, this site, and the Mohawk Valley has been living through a very difficult time in our history. When progress of a great city and a county seemed to be on such an upward path, the bottom fell out. Whereas the Mohawk Valley, the city of Utica, the county of Oneida received an unexpected and the most welcome gift. Steve Wynn and the Wynn Foundation came forward to help his birthplace after being recognized throughout the nation as one of the most progressive and successful developers of the city of Las Vegas. A native son, he returned and decided to become involved in one of the most important venues this area has ever had, the erection of a state-of-the-art hospital in downtown Utica. The Mohawk Valley Health System has been engaged in a multi-million-dollar project for a long time, and it is reality. The Wynn Hospital will be a wonderful asset as the Mohawk Valley and the city and the county. The announcement that the native son has returned and pledged $50 million to the hospital that shall bear his name staggered the community. In addition, Mr. Wynn indicated that this gift is not the end. He is thrilled that he will be in an integral part in this process of making the hospital all it can be, and hinted that this is not the only ambition he has in helping the citizens of the area. Be it resolved that the members of the Common Council for the City of Utica do hereby extend a heartfelt thank you to Mr. Steve Wynn and the Wynn Family Foundation. We look forward to the day when all the citizens of the area can celebrate with him on the day of the opening.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Your votes. Thank you.
Okay, my next thing is gonna be ordinance number...
Hang on, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
9 yeas adopted.
All right, thank you. You have the floor.
Sorry, Mr. President.
Quite all right.
Proposed ordinance number 2, fence permit, ordained that the Department of Codes Enforcement is hereby authorized to grant a permit to, please somebody say that name, because I'm having a hard time with it here. Okay, the owner of the property located on 901 Ontario Street, Utica, New York, to erect a 7-foot fence in the height to replace a 15-feet hedge line that runs on both sides of his property.
Second? We got a bunch of seconds. I'm gonna go with Miola. All right, your votes.
That's all I have tonight, Mr. President. Thank you.
Hang on. Third ward, your vote? Quite all right.
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you.
You told me to be quick.
All right. Thank you. Council at Large and Minority Leader, Mark Williamson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple things. Councilman Moody, that was a very good speech. Candace Olis would have been very proud of you. He likes to use that narrative thing. So, anyways, I got a question though. This BLC, is this a congressional group?
I'll limit my comments on it, but there's the
Is it congressionally chartered, in other words, or is this just a group that came together? Just came together? And are they from Utica, or are they outside of Utica?
A lot of them are from Utica. Not all, but the majority.
And they were on the board, not on Utica? They lived outside Utica, they were on the board originally?
Not on.
One of them.
One of them.
Yeah. Miss Attorney Rose Campbell is from outside of Utica. She was on the board. She's also on the Black Leadership Coalition.
Well, that doesn't make sense, but anyways, okay. On a later note here, okay. I have something to pass, a resolution number 4. I'd like to move it out.
Mm-hmm.
Can I get a second?
Okay.
I hope this is full council. A resolution on behalf of the survivors of Warren H. Shorey requesting that the President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr., award the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously to Private Warren H. Shorey for conspicuous gallantry at the risk of his own life on February 19, 1945, as set forth herein. Now, what I'm reading here, he received the Distinguished Service Cross, which is second to the Congressional Medal of Honor. And the reason why I am doing this is because I'm not sure if it was towards the end of the war and he might have been looked over, I don't know. So, whereas Warren H. Shorey was born on March 12, 1923 in Stittsville, New York. He was educated in Utica schools, And at the time of his entry in the United States Army, he was residing with his wife Mary and their 2 children, Barbara and Judith, at 1219 Warren Street in the city of Utica, which I believe is West Utica, correct? And whereas Private First Class Warren H. Shorey was killed in action on February 19, 1945 in Germany, and was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross posthumously on June 17, 1945. And whereas the citation read as follows: the President of the United States of America, authorized by the Act of Congress July 9, 1918, takes pride in presenting the Distinguished Service Cross to PFC Warren H. Shorey, United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in connection with military operations against the armed enemy while serving with the 385th Infantry Regiment, 76th Infantry Division, which was actually Patton's division, in action against the enemy forces on February 19, 1945. During an intense enemy artillery barrage near Iril, Germany, Private Shorey courageously went to the aid of 2 wounded comrades trapped in an exposed position, placed them in a foxhole, and noticed that the enemy shells were landing very close, covered them with his own body. He was killed by the German shell and landed only 5 feet from his position. But his heroic self-sacrifice and action saved the lives of his comrades. Private First Class Shorey's fearless courage and supreme devotion to duty are in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service. And whereas the aforementioned description emphasizes the acts of courage, gallantry, and self-sacrifice to describe a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, the actions of PFC Warren H. Shorey, whose acts were beyond the call of duty, merit that he be seriously considered for this honor. He is a native son of the city of Utica and the county of Oneida and the state of New York. To date, there have been 618 medals awarded posthumously. PFC Warren H. Shorey would be a wonderful 619th. Therefore, be it resolved that the Common Council of the City of Utica calls upon Senator Charles Schumer, Senator Kristen Gillibrand, and Congresswoman Claudia Tenney to join with the Common Council of Utica on behalf of the survivors of Warren H. Shorey in convincing the President of the United States to honor PFC Warren H. Shorey with the Congressional Medal of Honor for the selfless act of sacrificing his life to save the lives of his brothers in combat.
Your votes?
Well,
9 yeas adopted.
Thank you, council, for
and add that the 25th of March is Congressional Medal of Honor Day. It's an actual day. And we have 2 Medal of Honor recipients that are buried up in Forest Hill Cemetery. One is the first Chief of Police, if I'm right, Charles Cleveland. He was also a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, as well as the first Chief of Police of City of Utica. And as Colonel Gridley as well are up there. PFC Shorey is buried in New Forest Cemetery. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting all the work into that. Congratulations on the council for digging all that up. Thank you. Councilman Lomatico.
Thank you, Mr. President.
You have the floor.
All right. First of all, before I move on with the nursing home reform legislation, I just wanted to get back to Mr. Howard Potter's question on the tax issue he's having. We are working that currently, and I should have an answer for him, hopefully a good answer for him shortly. But like anything in county government and city government, and it just takes a while for things just to get moving. But hang in there, Howard. You should hear something shortly. All right?
I do have his contact information. I'll make sure he gets that message.
I've already texted him on it. So
oh, okay, good.
So
good, perfect.
he knew I was working on it, I think. So anyways, I'm going to move the proposed resolution number 6, resolution affirming support for nursing home reform legislation to pass in the New York State budget. But before I do that, I have a guest speaker here, Ms. Emma Moore, who is a nurse at Oneida Center Nursing Home, and I'd like to bring up a true unsung hero, one of the true unsung heroes of this COVID epidemic. Emma, please come on up. Thank you. You could take your mask off and talk. So.
All rather not.
All right, never mind.
I'm sorry. Hello, everyone.
You can tell she's a nurse.
My name is Emma Monroe, and I'm a nurse's aide at Oneida Center, and I'm also a proud member of 1199 SEIU. And I'm here tonight to tell you about why Councilman Jack LaMedico is introducing a resolution on nursing home reform. The COVID-19 pandemic is, I'm so sorry, I'm so nervous, has exposed and worsened what nursing home residents and staff has been experiencing for years. The Oneida Center, at Oneida Center, we are always working with fewer aides than we should. We are rushed to provide residents during care and during our shift. It is also uncommon for us as staff to spend our own paychecks on lotion, soaps, and washcloths for our residents so they can feel as human as possible. It is also common for management to make our residents choose between one link of sausage or a hard-boiled egg to accompany one piece of toast for breakfast on a daily basis. Management claims they cannot afford to invest in their residents at Oneida Center, but they are buying new nursing homes all over the state all the time. They are also using profit to purchase airlines for their family. Yet management can't spend enough money to provide a decent, nutritious breakfast for our residents on a daily basis. Governor Cuomo, the New York State Senate, and the New York State Assembly are all working together to pass nursing home reform in this budget. Our Assembly member, Assemblywoman Marianne Buttenshine, is currently a nursing home reform champion. She is working hard to ensure our nursing home residents and staff receive quality care they deserve. She is also working hard to ensure that nursing home owners with poor track records, like Oneida Center owners, are unable to keep purchasing nursing homes. In the fall, the city of Utica recognized all essential workers with the honorees of Essential Way street sign in front of my facility, Oneida Center. We thank Councilman LaMedico and the entire council for standing with us as nursing home workers and as Uticans to stand in unity with nursing home staff and residents to show their support and dire need to pass nursing home reform in this year's budget. I also want to say, I am only here to speak for the people I take care of. I am their voice. I go to work every day to try to make their life a little bit better. I can tell you the things that they go through, and I can help them. But this is an everyday thing that they live with. Every day they go without. I have pictures to show you the breakfast that they have in the morning. It's pretty sad. And I would never want no one to have to live how they live. I wouldn't want my family members to have the breakfast that they have or have to have care that they have. And it's really, really sad. And I'm here to be the voice for them, to stand with them, because no one else, if I don't do it, no one else will. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. I have a seat right there because
Thank
I want
you.
you to be there when we do this legislation. I want you to be there when we approve it. And then once again, I'd like to move this resolution with amendments to follow.
Move from committee.
Correct.
All right. Second. All right, thank you.
You want me to read it, or do you want to go right with the amendments first? I don't know, because it's wordy.
Why don't you make the motions to amend first, and
Okay,
then
I'm
read
going
it
to
as
make motions
amended?
to amend it. And what I'd like to do is go down to now therefore be it resolved section.
All right, so hang on just one second. There was a second to pulling this from committee. Any opposed? All right, perfect. Now you can amend. Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to go down to now therefore be resolved, paragraph 1. I would like to strike the Senate bill, paragraph that's mentioned in there. All right, I'd like to go down to paragraph 3. I'd like to strike the Senate bill that's mentioned in there. And I'd like to go down to paragraph 4 and strike the Senate bill that is mentioned in there.
All right, and all those are reflected on the screen and the legislation that is now in Eco 360 in the packet.
All right, So no,
A second to those amendments? We have a second from Miola. Any opposed to amending the legislation? Anyone opposed? Okay. Is
and
there
this will
any
be a
oth-
full council, correct? All right.
Okay,
So now I'd like to read in the resolution.
thank you.
All right, full council resolution affirming support for nursing home reform legislation to pass in the New York State budget. Whereas COVID-19 has devastated New York nursing home residents and the staff who care and love for those residents, and whereas too many nursing home residents passed away from COVID-19, leaving behind their families and loved ones, and whereas nursing home visitation restrictions have left nursing home residents without the social and physical support they need to thrive, and whereas caregiving staff had to fight to receive adequate personal protective equipment and paid sick days, as many fell victim to COVID-19 and some have passed away, whereas New York State citizens owe it to them, to all of them, to reform the state's nursing homes now, and whereas the COVID-19 pandemic exposed and exacerbated the underlying poor conditions in too many of our state's nursing homes, and whereas some nursing home owners claim that they are underfunded and cannot afford to provide better quality care, but they are increasingly using opaque financial arrangements to hide the true profitability of their homes. Whereas the New York State Legislature should continue its leadership on nursing home reform and pass legislation in the New York State budget to make sure nursing home owners are spending taxpayers' money the way it is meant to be spent to achieve the quality of care nursing home residents deserve. Now be it therefore resolved that the City of Utica Common Council supports New York State proposed legislation to require nursing homes to spend a minimum of 70% of their revenue on resident care, and within that 40% on direct care staffing. The average New York State nursing home already spends close to these amounts of nonprofit nursing homes. These standards will bring up the floor and target the worst offenders. 2, support a minimum of 4.1 hours of care per nursing home residents per day to be included in the New York State nursing home reform package. 3, support New York State proposed legislation that would ensure adequate public notice and input when nursing homes are slated to be sold or change management, and prevent nursing home owners with poor track records from purchasing new nursing homes. 4, support New York State proposed legislation to undertake strict infectious control audits and ensure that residents, family members, and workers have input into the planning and implementation of nursing home safety. And finally, number 5, direct the city clerk to send certified copies of this resolution to Governor Andrew Cuomo, New York State Senator Joseph Griffo, New York State Assemblywoman Marianne Buttonshaw, and to all other local and regional groups interested in advocating for nursing home reform in the state of the New York State budget. In the New York State budget. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Your votes.
9 yeas adopted.
There you go, Emma.
Can I just?
Thank you.
I think this is great. I was very glad to vote for it, glad for it to be full council. I'd like us to think about, we are legislators. We can do more than simply encourage other legislators to do the right thing. Why couldn't we pass some laws that reflect this for Utica? I don't know. I just think it's something for us to think about in the future. We could pass some of these as laws that would regulate nursing homes right here in Utica, couldn't we?
I'm not sure. You'd probably have to judge, but I'm thinking that I don't think you could supersede New York State laws concerning nursing homes. That would be something that I'd have to ask Judge Garamo.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else qualifying to vote? Okay, anything else, Councilman Levetico? All right, Councilman DeBrango.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
And again, thank you, Emma.
There's nothing left?
There's no more legislation left, but thank you, Mr. President.
That's good, because my computer's about to die.
First of all, I want to
This is the backup today.
wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day. I see our chiefs, the fire department, from the police department, they're sporting their green. I have mine on. Judge Garamone, we're supporting our
Before we
Irish
all
friends
run,
out there.
Hang on, before we all run, thank you. Thank you. right. Anything else?
Yeah, a couple things. One thing, this spring, I know Councilman Beatrice mentioned it, and our codes commissioner mentioned it. You know, it's an ugly time of year right now with the snow melting and the snow uncovering all the papers and trash or whatever on everybody's property. Just please take your time to clean up around your property. If everybody spends a half hour or something cleaning up around the front of their homes and businesses, whatever, I think it'll start looking a lot better. The other thing is, the fire department, I understand that they ratified a contract for 2 years. It's already, the money's already designated in our budget for this year for the past 2 years, so that's a good thing. There's no increase in our budget, obviously. But I'm happy to say that, you know, they worked hard through the pandemic. They actually had a fire tonight while we were here in the meeting, so hats off to the men and women on the fire department for doing a great job. Also, they are still behind 1 year, and now this year coming up, so hopefully they can get together with the administration and make some progress. That is all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, I've got something real quick, before we call. I brought something up at the last council meeting. It was rent relief. It was about the landlords. It was about how the stimulus money was distributed or not distributed in some cases. I want to thank the council for coming together on that and bringing in a speaker. Multiple people made multiple calls. There was a lot of coordination. Thank you for listening to that, because I do believe certain people were already helped just by the fact that everyone took action and trying to figure out what was going on. And I look forward to the council interacting with the county and state government and hopefully sorting that out. So thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Okay. Have a great evening.